Welcome back to Soft Light Theory, where science is not explained, it's felt. Here, each episode is a slow unfolding, a cinematic meditation designed to cradle your thoughts and guide you gently into sleep. In our last journey, Neuroplasticity meets AI, you wandered through the circuitry of learning, where your mind and machine danced in parallel, each adapting, looping, evolving. It was a story of rhythm and repetition, of how technology mirrors the brain's quiet brilliance. Tonight in episode 6, we turn inward again, toward the aging mind, toward the question that lingers in every forgotten name, every paused sentence, every moment of doubt. Is decline inevitable? This new episode, Neuroplasticity and Aging, is not a warning. It's a revelation. You'll drift through 12 chapters like stepping stones across a quiet stream, each one exploring how your brain continues to change, not in spite of age, but because of it. You'll meet the science of memory, the biology of emotion, the quiet resilience of neurons that refuse to give up. You'll learn how sleep repairs, how movement awakens, how purpose rewires the deepest circuits of thought. This is not a story of loss, it's a story of renewal. As we begin, take a moment to share your corner of the world. Let us know where you're listening from, your time, your place, your quiet sky. Together, we'll weave a constellation of soft minds and curious hearts across the globe. This is not just science, it's a hymn to your mind's ability to bloom, even in the twilight. Let the story begin. Chapter 1. The Whisper of Change. The summary of this chapter. Your brain is not a monument. It is a tide, always moving. Even in stillness, it reshapes itself in silence. Tonight, you enter the quiet laboratory of your own mind, where change is not forced, but invited, where softness becomes strength. You lie in the hush of night, your breath slow, your limbs heavy with rest. But beneath the quiet, something stirs, not in the world outside, but in the world within. Your brain is not sleeping the way you are. It is listening. It is sorting, weaving, pruning, growing. It is alive with change, not dramatic, not loud, but rhythmic, like the tide. This is neuroplasticity, not a word you wear on your sleeve, but a truth that lives in your cells. It means your brain is not fixed. It is not a finished sculpture. It is clay, still soft, still shaping itself in response to what you feel, what you learn, what you love. You are not the same person you were yesterday, not because of what you did, but because of how your brain responded. Every thought, every emotion, every moment of attention leaves a fingerprint. Imagine a forest path. The more you walk it, the clearer it becomes. The grass bends, the soil compacts, the way becomes familiar. Your brain works like that. Neurons fire together, wire together. The more you repeat a thought, I'm safe, I'm learning, I'm healing, the stronger that path becomes. But it's not just repetition, it's emotion, it's meaning, it's the feeling that wraps around the thought, like moss around stone. Tonight, you are not just resting, you are tending your inner forest. You are allowing new paths to form, not by force, but by softness. In our last episode, you wandered through the meeting point of mind and machine, how artificial intelligence mimics learning, how algorithms adapt like neurons. But tonight, you return to the original intelligence, your own. No wires, no code, just the quiet miracle of your brain responding to the world with grace. You may wonder, can change really happen this late? Isn't the brain too old, too tired, too set in its ways? But science says no. Studies show that even in your 70s, 80s, 90s, your brain can grow new connections. It can recover from injury. It can learn new languages, new dances, new ways of seeing. It is not age that limits change. It is belief. And tonight, you believe in softness. You believe in rest. You believe in the whisper, not the shout. Your brain is listening to the rhythm of your breath, to the story you tell yourself, to the silence between sentences. Even now, as you lie still, your hippocampus, the keeper of memory, is sorting through the day. Your prefrontal cortex, the planner, the thinker, is dimming its lights, but not shutting down. Your brain is not a machine that powers off. It is a garden that grows in moonlight, and what you feed it matters. Not just food, but thought. Not just information, but kindness. Neuroplasticity thrives in safety. When you feel calm, your brain opens. When you feel threatened, it closes. This is not weakness, it is design. So tonight, you offer your brain the gift of safety. You let go of urgency. You let go of judgment. You let go of the need to be perfect. And in that letting go, you begin to change. Not because you tried harder, but because you allowed. This is the paradox of growth. It happens when you stop chasing it. Your neurons are listening. They are waiting for your permission to rewire, to reroute, to renew. And you give it now, not with effort, but with breath. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are blooming. Even if you feel tired, even if you feel slow, even if you feel unsure, your brain is still blooming. And as you drift deeper into sleep, you feel it. The quiet rearrangement, the soft unfolding, the whisper of change. It does not ask for proof. It does not need applause. It simply begins. And tomorrow, you may notice something small, a new thought, a lighter feeling, a different way of seeing. But for now, you rest in the knowing that change is already happening. And as the night deepens, a question begins to form, not loud, but curious. And as the night deepens, your mind begins its quiet rearrangement, not with urgency, but with grace. You are not fixed. You are unfolding. And somewhere in that unfolding, a question lingers. If change is possible, then perhaps decline is not the only story. The path opens now into the myth of the fading mind, where aging is not a slow unraveling, but a quiet transformation waiting to be seen. Chapter 2. The Myth of the Fading Mind. The summary of this chapter. You've heard that aging means decline, a slow unraveling. But science tells a softer story, one of adaptation and growth. Tonight, you question the myth and begin to see aging as transformation, a quiet evolution, not a vanishing. You lie still beneath the hush of night, your breath a soft rhythm against the silence. The world outside has dimmed, but inside, your thoughts begin to stir. A quiet question rises, is my mind fading? You've heard the stories, that aging is a slow unraveling. That memory slips like mist through trembling fingers, that the mind, once sharp and quick, dulls with time. But tonight, you listen deeper, not to the myth, but to the science beneath it. Your brain, even now, is alive with electricity. Tiny pulses of light flicker across networks of cells. Thoughts drift like fireflies, illuminating pathways carved by experience. And those pathways, they are not fixed. They are not brittle. They are not fading. They are changing. This is neuroplasticity, a word that sounds clinical but feels like poetry. It means your brain is not a stone sculpture, but a riverbed. It reshapes itself with every current of thought, every ripple of emotion, every new experience. Even now, even as you age, you imagine your brain as a forest. In youth, the trees grow fast, wild, tangled. But with time, the forest learns. It clears paths, it deepens roots, it becomes wiser in its growth, less chaotic, more intentional. Science once believed that neurons, the cells that carry your thoughts, stopped growing after childhood, that the forest froze. But now we know, even in your later years, new neurons can sprout, especially in the hippocampus, the part of your brain that holds memory and learning. It's like a hidden garden, quietly blooming. You picture it, a small grove, tucked beneath the canopy. Each new experience waters the soil. Each moment of curiosity, each act of reflection, sends sunlight through the leaves. Growth happens here, not loudly, but persistently. And it's not just about new cells, it's about new connections. Your brain is a weaver, threading together ideas, emotions, sensations. With age, the threads may shift, but the tapestry becomes richer. Older minds often show increased bilateral activity, using both hemispheres of the brain to solve problems that younger minds might tackle with just one. It's not a loss of function. It's a redistribution, a quiet rebalancing. You think of a dancer, once swift and impulsive, now slower but more deliberate. Each movement carries intention. Each step is informed by memory, by nuance, by grace. The dance changes, but it deepens. Even memory, that elusive thread, is not simply lost. It transforms. You may forget names, misplace keys, stumble over dates, but you gain something else, the ability to see patterns, to reflect, to synthesize. Older minds excel at integrating knowledge, at drawing meaning from complexity. It's not about speed, it's about depth. You remember a conversation, one that lingered, not because it was fast, but because it was full, full of pauses, of laughter, of layered understanding. That's the kind of memory that grows with age, not the flash of a fact, but the warmth of a story. And stories matter. Your brain is wired for them. As you age, your narrative mind becomes more active. You begin to see your life as a whole, not just a series of moments. You reflect, you connect, you find coherence in the chaos. This is called autobiographical memory, the ability to weave your experiences into a meaningful arc. It's a skill that strengthens with age. Like a novelist revisiting old chapters, you begin to see the themes, the motifs, the quiet transformations. You are not fading, you are editing. And editing is powerful. It allows you to reshape your past, to soften its edges, to find wisdom in its wounds. The brain doesn't just store memories, it revises them. Each time you recall a moment, you rewrite it slightly. You add new context, new emotion, new meaning. This is not a flaw, it's a feature. It's how healing happens. You think of a scar, once raw, now smooth. The skin remembers, but it also adapts. So does the mind. Even your emotional landscape shifts. Older adults often report greater emotional stability, more resilience, more capacity for empathy. The storms of youth give way to a gentler climate. You learn to regulate, to reflect, to respond with care. This is supported by science. The amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear and emotion, becomes less reactive with age. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason and reflection, becomes more engaged. You feel more, but you also understand more. You are not fading, you are harmonizing. And harmony is not silence, it's balance. It's the ability to hold joy and sorrow in the same breath, to feel deeply but not be overwhelmed, to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. You begin to see aging not as decline, but as refinement, like a photograph developing in slow light. The image sharpens, The shadows deepen. The story becomes clearer. You are still learning, still growing, still changing. And change is not something to fear. It is the essence of life. Your brain, your mind, yourself, they are all in motion, not toward an end, but toward a new beginning. You think of the moon, waxing, waning, never static. Its phases are not losses, but transitions. Each one reveals a different kind of light. So does your mind. Tonight, you rest in that light. You let go of the myth. You embrace the truth that aging is not a fading, but a flowering. Perhaps memory is not a vault, but a tide. And perhaps the next chapter begins not with what you forget, but with how you tend to what remains. Because your mind is not just a map of the past. It is a garden. And tonight, something begins to grow. Chapter 3. The Brain's Garden. The summary of this chapter. Your brain is a garden, shaped by attention, emotion, and use. You explore how habits, learning, and movement nourish its soil. Tonight, you plant seeds of curiosity and feel your neural pathways stretch toward light. Growth begins not with force, but with care. You lie still, wrapped in the quiet of evening. Outside, the world softens into shadow. Inside, your thoughts begin to settle, like leaves drifting gently to the forest floor. You imagine your brain not as a machine, but as a garden, not made of wires and gears, but of soil, roots, and light. This garden is yours. It stretches behind your eyes, beneath your skull, across the landscape of your mind. It is shaped by what you feel, what you repeat, what you believe. And tonight, you walk its paths. You begin with attention. Where you place it, growth follows. Like sunlight on a patch of earth, your focus nourishes the neurons beneath. When you learn something new, a seed is planted. When you revisit it, the roots deepen. This is how habits form, not through willpower alone, but through repetition, through rhythm, through care. You think of brushing your teeth, tying your shoes, greeting someone with a smile. These are not just behaviors. They are neural trails, worn smooth by use. And the more you walk them, the more they bloom. But not all habits are helpful. Some are weeds, patterns of thought that choke the soil. Self-criticism, worry, avoidance. They grow when left unchecked. They thrive in neglect. Yet even weeds can be pulled. Even tangled roots can be loosened. Your brain is not fixed. It is responsive. You think of neuroplasticity again, the quiet ability of your brain to change, to prune what no longer serves, to strengthen what does. This pruning is not violent. It is gentle, like a gardener removing dead leaves to make room for new growth. And growth comes not just from thought, but from movement. Your body is part of the garden. Every step you take, every stretch, every breath sends signals to your brain. Exercise increases blood flow, delivers oxygen, stimulates the release of growth factors, proteins that help neurons flourish. You don't need to run marathons. Even a walk, a dance, a moment of stillness can nourish the soil. You think of your breath, how it rises and falls like waves against the shore. Breathing deeply calms the nervous system, activates the parasympathetic branch, the part that says, you are safe, you can grow. Safety matters. Your brain blooms in calm. Stress, on the other hand, shrinks the garden. Chronic stress floods the soil with cortisol, a hormone that, in excess, can damage neurons, especially in the hippocampus. But you are not helpless. You can restore balance. You can create conditions for growth. Through rest, through connection, through curiosity. Curiosity is the water of the mind. It flows into dry places, awakens dormant seeds, makes learning feel like play. When you ask a question, your brain lights up. When you explore, new pathways form. You don't need to know everything. You just need to wonder. Tonight, you wonder about your own garden. Which parts are thriving? Which parts need tending? You think of a memory, a moment that felt alive. Perhaps it was a conversation, a discovery, a quiet joy. That memory lives in your garden. Its roots are deep. Its leaves still shimmer. You think of a habit, one you wish to change. Perhaps it's a thought that returns too often, a behavior that no longer fits. That habit is a vine. It can be redirected. It can be trained to climb toward light. You think of a dream, something you've longed to learn, to create, to understand. That dream is a seed. It waits for your attention. It waits for your care. And care is the key. Your brain does not respond to punishment. It responds to kindness, to repetition, to rhythm. You are the gardener, not with tools, but with intention. You shape your mind not by force, but by presence. You begin to see your thoughts as petals, your emotions as rain, your actions as roots. And the soil, the foundation, is your belief in growth. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are blooming. Even now, as you lie still, your brain is changing. Neurons reach for each other, forming new connections. Old ones fade, making space. This is not magic. It is biology. But it feels like magic when you realize you are the one shaping it. You think of older adults who learn new languages, new instruments, new ways of seeing. Their gardens are not barren. They are wild with possibility. You think of children whose brains absorb everything, not because they are young, but because they are curious. Curiosity does not age. It deepens. And tonight, you plant seeds, not with urgency, but with trust. You trust that your brain will respond, will adapt, will grow. You trust that change is not a sprint, but a season. And seasons take time. You rest in that time. You rest in the rhythm of slow transformation. You are not just learning. You are cultivating. You are not just remembering. You are renewing. You are not just aging. You are blooming. And as the night deepens, you feel the soil soften. You feel the roots stretch. You feel the light return. Your brain is a garden, and tonight you've begun to tend it. Some seeds take days to sprout. Others wait for years, but all respond to care. And as the garden begins to grow, you begin to notice how memory weaves through its roots, not as a vault, but as a stream. In next chapter, you'll drift into its quiet current, where forgetting is not failure, but a form of flow, and where flexibility becomes the mind's most graceful strength. Chapter 4. The Memory That Learns to Bend. The summary of this chapter: memory is not a vault, it is a living stream. You drift through the science of recall, forgetting, and emotional tagging. Tonight, you learn how aging reshapes memory and how flexibility becomes its quiet strength. A chapter of gentle bends, soft erosion, and resilient flow. You begin tonight not with a question, but with a sensation. The feeling of something remembered, not as a photograph, but as a ripple. A scent from childhood, a voice you haven't heard in years, a moment that returns not in full, but in fragments, soft-edged, colored by emotion, and shaped by time. This is memory. Not a vault, not a shelf, not a perfect archive, but a stream. It flows through you, sometimes clear, sometimes murky, sometimes rushing, sometimes still. You've been taught to think of memory as storage, a place where facts are filed, where names are kept, where dates are locked away. But the brain does not work like a filing cabinet. It works like a river, and rivers change. Tonight, you drift into the science of memory, not as a system of precision, but as a landscape of movement. You learn that memory is not one thing. It is many things, braided together. There is working memory, the short-term space where thoughts are held, like juggling balls in the air. There is episodic memory, the storybook of your life, where scenes are stitched with emotion. There is semantic memory, the quiet library of facts and meanings. And there is procedural memory, the muscle-deep knowing of how to ride a bike, how to tie a knot, how to breathe without thinking. Each type lives in a different part of the brain. Each type bends in its own way. You float now into the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure, curled deep in the temporal lobe. It is here that new memories are born. It is here that experience becomes trace. But the hippocampus is not a vault. It is a gardener. It plants memories, nurtures them, and decides which ones to prune. You learn that forgetting is not a flaw. It is a form of wisdom. The brain forgets to make space. It forgets to protect you. It forgets to help you adapt. You do not need to remember every face in a crowd. You do not need to recall every detail of a painful day. You need to remember what matters, what helps you grow, what keeps you safe, what brings you joy. And so the brain forgets, gently, strategically, like a river carving new paths. You drift now into the amygdala, the almond-shaped sentinel of emotion. It tags memories with feeling. It decides what is urgent, what is dangerous, what is beautiful. Emotion makes memory sticky. A birthday surprise, a heartbreak, a moment of awe. These are etched deeper, not because they are more important, but because they are more felt. You learn that memory is not just about accuracy, it is about meaning, and meaning changes. As you age, your memory changes too, not just in strength, but in shape. You may forget names more easily. You may struggle to recall where you left your keys, but you may also become better at seeing patterns, at connecting ideas, at telling stories. Older brains bend. They do not break. You learn about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. Even in later years, new connections can form. New memories can be made. New paths can be carved. You are not a fixed archive. You are a living stream, and streams adapt. You learn that memory is reconstructive. Each time you recall something, you rebuild it. You do not pull it from a shelf. You reweave it. And in the reweaving, details shift, colors fade, emotions soften or sharpen. Memory is not a mirror. It is a canvas, and you are the painter. You drift now into the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reflection, of decision, of working memory. It is here that you hold thoughts in the present, juggle them, shape them, and let them go. This part of the brain is like a conductor or a lighthouse, guiding attention, filtering noise, choosing what to keep. You learn that attention is the gatekeeper of memory. What you notice, you remember. What you ignore, you forget. And so memory begins not with storage, but with presence. You begin to see how memory is shaped by rhythm, by sleep, by emotion, by repetition. Sleep, especially, is the great consolidator. During deep rest, the brain replays the day, strengthens connections, and clears away clutter. You learn that dreams may help memory too, not by recording facts, but by exploring feelings, by testing ideas, by softening wounds. You drift now into the science of forgetting, not as loss, but as flow. There is transience, the natural fading of unused memories. There is absent-mindedness, the slip of attention. There is blocking, When a name is on the tip of your tongue, there is misattribution. When you remember a detail, but place it in the wrong scene, there is suggestibility. When memory is shaped by others, and there is bias. When memory reflects your beliefs, you learn that forgetting is not failure, it is flexibility, and flexibility is strength. You begin to see memory not as a record, but as a guide. It helps you navigate, not by showing you everything, but by showing you what matters. You learn that memory is social. It is shaped by conversation, by storytelling, by shared experience. You remember better when you share. You remember deeper when you feel. You remember longer when you care. And so memory becomes a bridge between past and present, between self and other, between experience and meaning. You float now into the gentle science of aging, not as decline, but as transformation. Older brains may slow, but they also deepen. They may forget details, but they remember wisdom. You learn that older adults often show greater emotional regulation, greater empathy, greater perspective. Their memories bend, but do not break. And in the bending, there is grace. You begin to see memory as a dance, between holding on and letting go, between clarity and mystery, between fact and feeling. You are not losing your memories. You are reshaping them. You are not forgetting. You are flowing. And in the flow, you find yourself. You end tonight not with a conclusion, but with a question. If memory is a stream, what shapes its banks? What guides its flow? What happens when memory meets imagination? You begin to wonder how memory and imagination intertwine, how the stories you tell yourself become the stories you believe, and how the mind, in its quiet brilliance, learns not only to recall, but to feel. In next chapter, you'll drift into the warmth of emotional wisdom, where aging does not dull feeling, but deepens it, where compassion becomes clarity and calm becomes strength. Chapter 5. The Role of Emotion in Aging. The summary of this chapter. Your feelings guide your brain's attention and growth. You explore how emotional regulation changes with age and how compassion and calm support cognitive health. Tonight, you rest in the warmth of emotional wisdom, where aging becomes a soft unfolding of grace, a quiet warmth in your chest, a softness behind your eyes, a sense of something gentle settling in. This is emotion, not loud, not sharp, but present. You felt it before, in the hush of twilight, in the kindness of a stranger, in the memory of someone you love. Emotion is not just reaction, it is guidance. It shapes what you notice, what you remember, what you become. Tonight, you drift into the science of feeling, not as chaos, but as rhythm. You learn that emotion is not separate from thought. It is woven into it. Every decision, every memory, every moment of attention is colored by feeling. The brain does not divide logic from emotion. It blends them. You float now into the limbic system, the emotional core of the brain. Here lives the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus. Together, they form a symphony of feeling. The amygdala is the sentinel. It scans for danger, for beauty, for meaning. It tags experiences with urgency, with fear, with joy. The hippocampus, as you've met before, records the story. It remembers what the amygdala marks, and the hypothalamus, quiet and deep, translates emotion into the body, raising your heartbeat, slowing your breath, sending signals of stress or calm. You begin to see how emotion is not just felt, it is lived. And as you age, you live it differently. You learn that emotional regulation improves with age, not because feelings fade, but because wisdom grows. Older adults often show greater calm, greater empathy, greater ability to step back and see the whole picture. You drift into the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reflection. This part of the brain helps you pause, reframe, choose. It is here that emotional regulation takes shape, not by suppressing feeling, but by guiding it. You learn that with age, the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala begin to dance more gently. The alarms soften. The perspective widens. You do not react as quickly. You respond more thoughtfully. This is not decline. It is refinement. You begin to understand the positivity effect, a shift in attention toward the good. Older adults tend to focus more on uplifting experiences, more on gratitude, more on connection, not because they ignore pain, but because they choose peace. You learn that this shift supports cognitive health. Positive emotion reduces stress, and stress, when chronic, can harm memory, attention, and even immune function. Calm is not just a feeling, it is medicine. You float now into the vagus nerve, a long, winding thread that connects brain to body. It carries signals of safety, of rest, of compassion. When you feel calm, the vagus nerve hums, your heart slows, your digestion improves, your immune system strengthens. This is called vagal tone, and it improves with practices like deep breathing, gentle movement, and loving connection. You learn that compassion is not just kindness, it is regulation. When you care for others, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It soothes the amygdala, supports the prefrontal cortex, and deepens emotional resilience. You begin to see how aging is not just about loss, it is about gain. You gain perspective, you gain patience, you gain the ability to hold emotion like water in your hands, not tightly, but with grace. You learn that emotional wisdom is the ability to feel fully without being overwhelmed. It is the ability to sit with sadness without drowning, to welcome joy without clinging. You drift now into the science of emotional memory. You recall that emotion makes memory sticky, but with age, you begin to choose what sticks. You remember the laughter more than the argument. You remember the warmth more than the wound. This is not denial, it is healing. You learn that older adults often show greater emotional granularity, the ability to name and understand subtle feelings, not just sad, but wistful, not just happy, but content. This precision supports regulation. It helps you respond wisely, rather than react blindly. You begin to see emotion as a language, one that deepens with time. You float now into the orbitofrontal cortex, a region that helps evaluate reward and punishment. It helps you learn from experience, adjust expectations, and find balance. With age, this region becomes more attuned to long-term well-being rather than short-term gain. You begin to choose peace over drama, connection over competition, presence over urgency. This is emotional maturity, and it supports brain health. You learn that practices like mindfulness, gratitude, and compassion can reshape the brain. They strengthen the prefrontal cortex, soothe the amygdala, and support neuroplasticity. You are not just aging, you are evolving. You begin to see emotion not as a storm, but as weather, sometimes cloudy, sometimes clear, always moving. And you, with time, become a better navigator. You learn that emotional regulation is not about control, it is about flow. You allow feelings to rise, to speak, to pass. You do not chase them. You do not fear them. You listen. And in the listening, you grow. You drift now into the warmth of emotional wisdom, a place where aging feels like soft light, where the heart becomes spacious and the mind becomes kind. You remember that emotion guides attention, and attention shapes memory, and memory shapes identity. So when you choose compassion, you shape who you are. You begin to feel how emotional health is not separate from cognitive health. They are braided together like threads in a tapestry. You learn that loneliness, grief, and chronic stress can harm the aging brain, but connection, purpose, and love can heal it. You begin to see aging not as decline, but as deepening, not as fading, but as flowering. You rest now in the warmth of this truth, that your feelings are not flaws. They are guides. They help you grow. They help you heal. They help you remember what matters most. And tonight, you let them speak. You let them soften you. You let them carry you into the next question. You begin to wonder how emotion and identity intertwine, how the stories you feel become the stories you tell, and how the self, in its quiet unfolding, is shaped not just by thought, but by feeling. In next chapter, you drift into the surprising clarity of late bloom, where the aging brain, like a seasoned tree, sends out new branches, and where creativity, unexpected and luminous, finds its second wind. Chapter 6. The Brain's Second Wind. The summary of this chapter. There are moments when your mind surprises you. A new skill, a fresh insight, a sudden clarity. You explore how older brains recruit new regions and how creativity often blooms late. Tonight, you rest in the quiet brilliance of renewal. You begin tonight with a quiet surprise, a thought that feels new, a solution that arrives uninvited, a moment of clarity that wasn't there before. It feels like wind, soft, sudden, moving through the branches of your mind. This is the brain's second wind, not a gust of youth, but a breeze of renewal. You've been taught to expect decline, to believe that aging dims the mind, narrows the path, slows the spark. But tonight, you learn something different. You learn that the brain, even in later years, can surprise you. It can bloom. You drift now into the science of late-life cognition, not as a story of loss, but of adaptation. You learn that older brains do not simply fade, they rewire. They recruit new regions, build new pathways, and find new ways to solve old problems. This is called compensatory scaffolding, a graceful term for the brain's ability to adapt. When one part slows, another steps in. When a path narrows, a bridge is built. You float now into the frontal lobes, the seat of planning, judgment, and creativity. In younger brains, these regions work efficiently, but in older brains, they often expand their role. You learn that older adults may use both hemispheres to solve a problem that younger minds solve with one. This is not inefficiency, it is collaboration. The brain becomes more integrative, more holistic, more creative. You begin to see aging not as a dimming, but as a widening. You drift now into the Harold model, hemispheric asymmetry reduction in older adults. It shows how aging brains use both sides more equally. Left and right, logic and intuition, structure and story. You learn that this shift supports problem solving, especially in unfamiliar situations. You are not losing capacity, you are gaining flexibility. You float now into the Passer effect, posterior to anterior shift in aging. It shows how older brains shift activity forward toward the frontal regions. This shift supports attention, decision-making, and emotional regulation. You begin to see how the brain adjusts its strategy as you age. It does not give up, it evolves. You drift now into the world of creativity, not as talent, but as process. You learn that many artists, scientists, and thinkers have found their voice late in life. Georgia O'Keeffe painted her boldest flowers in her 70s. Frank Lloyd Wright designed the Guggenheim at 90. Toni Morrison published her first novel at 39 and won the Nobel at 62. Creativity does not expire. It deepens. You begin to understand that creativity is not just about novelty. It is about synthesis. Older minds have more material to work with, more memories, more emotions, more patterns. And with time, they learn to weave. You float now into the default mode network, a constellation of brain regions active during rest, daydreaming, and reflection. This network supports imagination, autobiographical memory, and creative insight. You learn that older adults often show stronger connectivity in this network. They spend more time in reflective thought, in inner exploration, in quiet synthesis. You begin to see rest not as idleness, but as incubation. You drift now into the science of learning, not as repetition, but as transformation. You learn that older adults can still learn new skills, new languages, new instruments. It may take longer, but the learning is deeper. You begin to understand that motivation plays a powerful role. When you care, you learn. When you feel purpose, you grow. You float now into the growth mindset, the belief that abilities can develop with effort and time. This mindset supports neuroplasticity even in older age. You learn that the brain responds to belief. When you expect decline, you may see it. But when you expect growth, you may find it. You begin to see how attitude shapes biology. You drift now into the science of wisdom, not as knowledge, but as integration. Wisdom blends emotion, experience, and reflection. It is not fast, it is deep. You learn that older adults often show greater tolerance for ambiguity, greater ability to hold paradox, greater capacity for empathy. These traits support creative thinking. You begin to see how wisdom is a form of artistry. You float now into the bilateral activation of older brains, the use of both hemispheres to process language, emotion, and meaning. This integration supports storytelling, poetry, and metaphor. You learn that older adults often become better communicators, not because they speak more, but because they speak with depth. You begin to feel how aging is a soft unfolding of insight. You drift now into the neurogenesis that continues in the hippocampus, even in later years. New neurons can still be born. New connections can still be made, especially when you move, when you learn, when you love. You learn that exercise, curiosity, and connection support brain health. You begin to see aging not as a closing, but as a blooming. You float now into the quiet joy of unexpected clarity, a moment when something clicks, when a pattern emerges, when a truth becomes visible. These moments are not rare. They are gifts of time. You learn that insight often comes slowly, like light through fog, and when it arrives, it feels like grace. You begin to trust that your mind still holds surprises. You begin to feel that your brain is still becoming. You rest now in the soft truth that creativity is not a spark of youth, but a flame of experience. And tonight, you let it glow. You let it guide you into the next question. You begin to wonder how creativity and identity intertwine, how the things you make reflect the person you've become, and how the act of creating can reshape the self. In next chapter, you'll drift into the quiet force that fuels it all. Not talent, not age, but purpose. A sense of meaning that lights the neural path and gives your mind a reason to grow. Tonight, you begin to ask, What moves you, and why does it matter? Chapter 7. The Power of Purpose. The summary of this chapter. Purpose is not a distant dream. It's a quiet rhythm beneath your thoughts. You explore how meaning and direction reshape the architecture of your brain. Tonight, you listen for what calls you forward and feel your neurons lean gently toward it. You lie still, the weight of the day softening into silence. Your breath slows. Your body knows it's time to rest, but your mind drifts towards something deeper, a question that doesn't need an answer, only space. What gives your life direction? Not the tasks or the titles, but the quiet pull beneath them. The feeling that something matters, that you matter. Purpose is not just a poetic idea. It's a biological force, a signal that travels through your brain like a compass needle finding north. When you feel connected to something meaningful, a person, a goal, a belief, your brain responds. Neurons fire in more coordinated patterns. Networks that govern attention, memory, and emotion begin to synchronize. Purpose, it turns out, is a cognitive enhancer. You don't need grand ambition. Even small acts of meaning, a kind word, a creative spark, a moment of awe, can shape your neural landscape. In the prefrontal cortex, where decisions and focus live, purpose strengthens the scaffolding. It helps you resist distraction, stay with discomfort, and choose what aligns with your values. In the hippocampus, where memory is born, purpose acts like a gardener. It prunes what's irrelevant and nourishes what's meaningful. Memories tied to purpose are more likely to be retained, revisited, and integrated into your sense of self. Even the amygdala, that vigilant watcher of threat, softens under the influence of purpose. When you feel guided by meaning, your brain interprets stress differently, not as danger, but as challenge, not as chaos, but as growth. You think of the elders who radiate calm, not because life spared them hardship, but because they found something to live for. A garden, a grandchild, a story still unfolding. Their brains, too, reflect this. Studies show that older adults with a strong sense of purpose have better cognitive resilience. They maintain sharper memory, more stable mood, and even healthier sleep. Purpose is protective. It's like a lighthouse in fog, not removing the fog, but helping you navigate through it. You wonder, what gives you that feeling? Not just happiness, but alignment. That sense that your actions echo something deeper. Maybe it's the way you care for others, or the art you create, or the questions you ask when no one's watching. Purpose doesn't need applause. It needs presence. You recall a moment, perhaps from childhood, when you felt fully alive. Not because you were praised, but because you were immersed, curious, engaged, connected. That moment lives in your brain as more than memory. It's a neural signature, a trace of purpose. And tonight, you begin to notice how those traces accumulate. Each time you act from meaning, your brain rewires. Tiny changes in synaptic strength. New bridges between regions. A slow, quiet evolution. You don't need to force it. Purpose is not a performance. It's a relationship between you and the world, between your values and your actions. Sometimes it's clear. Other times it's foggy. But even in uncertainty, your brain listens. It adapts. It waits. You think of the Japanese concept of ikigai, a reason for being. Not a job, but a harmony between what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what sustains you. Your brain thrives on that harmony. It doesn't need perfection. It needs direction. Purpose also shapes time. When you feel guided, moments stretch. you become more present, more attuned, more able to savor. And that savoring, that deep engagement, activates the default mode network, a system in your brain that weaves together memory, imagination, and identity. It's the network that lights up when you reflect, daydream, or tell stories about yourself. Purpose gives that network a storyline, a thread that connects the chapters. Not always linear, but always alive. You begin to see your life as a narrative, not fixed, but evolving. And your brain, ever adaptive, responds to that narrative. When you feel lost, your brain searches for coherence. When you feel purposeful, it finds it. Even your immune system listens. Purpose has been linked to lower inflammation, better cardiovascular health, and longer lifespan. It's as if your whole body leans toward meaning. You don't need to know the full path, just the next step, and the feeling that it matters. Tonight, you reflect on what moves you, not what impresses others, but what feels true. You think of the people you've helped, the ideas that stirred you, the moments that felt like home. And you realize purpose is not something you chase. It's something you notice. It lives in the quiet choices, the way you listen, the way you create, the way you stay curious. Your neurons respond, not with fireworks, but with quiet energy, a subtle shift in rhythm, a readiness. You feel it in your breath, in the way your thoughts begin to settle, in the gentle sense that you are part of something larger. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're asking the right questions. And as you drift, you begin to wonder, if purpose shapes the brain, what else might shape it? What other forces, beyond emotion and meaning, might guide your neural journey? You begin to feel the pull of rest, not as escape, but as renewal. Your brain, like a quiet architect, prepares for its nightly work, clearing, stitching, reshaping thought. In next chapter, you'll drift, sense the rhythm beneath your dreams, a slow, cellular choreography that heals without sound. And you wonder, what does sleep remember, and what does it choose to forget? Chapter 8. The Dance of Sleep and Synapse. The summary of this chapter: sleep is not silence. It's a slow choreography of healing. You explore how rest clears the mind, strengthens memory, and rewires the architecture of thought. Tonight, you drift into sleep as your brain begins its quiet work. You lie down, not to escape the day, but to surrender to something deeper. The light fades, your breath softens, and your brain, without asking permission, begins its nightly ritual. Sleep is not passive. It is not a pause. It is a renovation, a slow, cellular dance that restores what wakefulness wears down. As your body rests, your brain becomes a quiet architect. It clears debris, strengthens connections, and reshapes the scaffolding of thought. You begin to drift, and beneath your dreams, a hidden choreography unfolds. In the first stage, your brain slows its rhythm. Neurons fire less frequently, like a city dimming its lights. This is the descent, the gentle slope into non-REM sleep. Here, the glymphatic system awakens, a network of fluid channels that flushes out waste, proteins, toxins, metabolic clutter, all swept away like dust from a quiet room. You imagine it like a tide moving through your brain's corridors, cleansing the spaces between cells. This nightly rinse protects against cognitive decline, against the buildup of what doesn't belong. And as the cleaning continues, another process begins: memory consolidation. Your hippocampus, the keeper of short-term memory, starts to sort. It decides what to keep, what to discard, and what to send deeper into long-term storage. You think of your day, the faces, the feelings, the fragments of thought. Some will fade, others will be stitched into the fabric of who you are. This stitching happens in slow waves, neural oscillations that ripple through the cortex, replaying patterns, reinforcing meaning. It's not just repetition, it's refinement. Your brain doesn't just remember, it reinterprets. You begin to see sleep as a kind of storytelling, a way for your brain to make sense of experience, to weave coherence from chaos. And then you enter REM, the stage of vivid dreams. Your eyes flicker beneath closed lids, your muscles relax, and your brain, paradoxically, becomes more active. In REM, the emotional centers light up. The amygdala, the limbic system, the regions that process feeling. This is where dreams unfold, not as random images, but as emotional rehearsals. Your brain simulates scenarios, tests responses, explores possibilities. You dream of flying, of falling, of speaking truths you wouldn't dare by day. These dreams are not meaningless. They are rehearsals. They help you regulate emotion, prepare for uncertainty, and integrate experience. Even nightmares serve a purpose. They activate threat circuits, allowing you to process fear in a safe, symbolic space. You begin to understand why sleep deprivation feels so disorienting. Without sleep, your brain cannot clean, cannot consolidate, cannot rehearse. It's not just fatigue, it's fragmentation. You recall the fog after a sleepless night, the way thoughts scatter, the way emotions swell. That fog is real. Sleep loss disrupts the prefrontal cortex, impairs decision-making, and heightens reactivity. But tonight, you are not deprived. You are drifting, and your brain is dancing. You think of the synapse, the tiny gap between neurons where communication happens. During sleep, these synapses change. Some strengthen, some weaken. It's a process called synaptic homeostasis. Your brain trims what's unnecessary, reinforces what's useful, and restores balance. It's like pruning a tree so it can grow stronger. This pruning is essential for learning. Without it, your brain becomes cluttered, overconnected, unable to focus. You begin to appreciate the elegance of this nightly edit. Not everything must be kept. Some thoughts must be let go. And sleep, in its quiet wisdom, knows what to release. You think of children, how they sleep deeply, how their brains grow rapidly. Sleep fuels development. It supports neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, to adapt, to learn. Even in adulthood, this plasticity remains. Sleep keeps it alive. You imagine your brain as a garden. Sleep is the gardener. It waters, weeds, and waits. You don't need to control it. You only need to rest. And as you rest, your immune system listens. Sleep strengthens it. It reduces inflammation, supports repair, and protects against illness. Your heart listens too. Sleep regulates blood pressure, balances hormones, and supports cardiovascular health. It's not just the brain, it's the whole body leaning into restoration. You begin to feel grateful for this quiet work, the healing you cannot see, but always feel. You think of the night not as absence, but as presence, a time when your brain returns to itself. And you wonder, what else happens beneath the surface? What other rhythms shape your mind without your awareness? You begin to sense that sleep is not the end of the day, but the beginning of something deeper, a renewal, a rebalancing, a return. And as your thoughts soften, you feel the dance continue, not with urgency, but with grace. Your neurons hum, your memories settle, your emotions find their place, and you, held in this quiet choreography, begin to drift. not away, but inward, toward the center of something ancient and still evolving. You begin to notice how your thoughts are shaped not just by silence, but by motion. Each breath, each stretch, each rhythm of your heartbeat echoes through the mind. Tonight, you listen inward, to the quiet intelligence of your body, and feel your brain respond with clarity, balance, and calm. And you wonder, what does your body know that your thoughts have yet to learn? Chapter 9, The Body-Brain Connection. The summary of this chapter: your brain listens to your body, to the rhythm of breath, the stretch of movement, the quiet signals of sensation. You explore how motion, nourishment, and touch shape the way you think and feel. Tonight, you begin to sense how every step and breath supports your mind. You lie still, but your body remembers motion. The way your feet pressed into the earth today, the way your lungs expanded with breath, the way your heart kept time even when you weren't listening. Your brain remembers too. It listens to your body in ways you rarely notice, not just through thought, but through rhythm, through sensation, through movement. You begin to feel it, the quiet intelligence of your muscles, the subtle pulse of your blood, the gentle sway of your breath. This is not separate from your mind. It is your mind, expressed through the body. Your brain is not a solitary organ. It is woven into your flesh, your bones, your heartbeat. Every step you take sends signals upward. Every breath you draw shapes your chemistry. Every stretch, every pause, every touch is a message. You think of movement, not as exercise, but as communication. When you walk, your brain receives rhythm. When you dance, it receives pattern. When you stretch, it receives release. Physical activity is not just good for the body, it's nourishment for the brain. You imagine your neurons responding to motion, like leaves responding to wind, bending, swaying, growing stronger. Exercise increases blood flow. It delivers oxygen, glucose, and nutrients to the brain's most active regions. It stimulates the release of BDNF, a protein that supports neuroplasticity, helping neurons grow, connect, and survive. You begin to see movement as medicine, not just for muscles, but for memory, for mood, for clarity. Even gentle movement has power. A slow walk, a quiet stretch, a few deep breaths. These moments send signals of safety. They calm the nervous system, reduce inflammation, and support emotional regulation. You think of breath, how it moves without effort, how it carries both air and rhythm. Each inhale activates the sympathetic system, a gentle alertness. Each exhale activates the parasympathetic system, a soft release. You begin to notice how breath shapes thought, how slow breathing slows the mind, how deep breathing deepens awareness. Your brain listens, it adjusts, it responds. You think of nutrition, how food becomes chemistry, how chemistry becomes thought. The gut, often called the second brain, is home to trillions of microbes. They produce neurotransmitters, influence mood, and communicate with the brain through the vagus nerve. You imagine this connection like a quiet conversation between belly and brain. When you eat nourishing food, your brain receives stability. When you eat mindfully, it receives presence. Omega-3s, antioxidants, fiber, fermented foods, they support cognition, reduce inflammation, and protect against decline. You begin to see food not just as fuel, but as dialogue. You think of sensory input, the way light touches your eyes, the way sound enters your ears, the way texture meets your skin. These sensations are not background noise. They shape your brain's wiring. A walk in nature calms the amygdala. Soft music activates reward pathways. Gentle touch releases oxytocin, the hormone of trust and connection. You begin to feel how your environment becomes part of your mind. Even silence has texture. Even stillness has rhythm. You think of posture, how the way you hold yourself affects the way you feel. An open chest invites confidence. A relaxed jaw invites calm. A grounded stance invites clarity. Your brain reads these signals and adjusts its chemistry. You begin to understand that the body is not a vessel. It is a partner. It is a guide. You think of people who move with grace, who breathe with intention, who eat with awareness. Their minds often reflect that same balance. You don't need perfection. You need presence. Tonight, you feel your breath. You sense your heartbeat. You notice the way your body holds the day. And you begin to release it. You stretch gently. You breathe slowly. You let your body tell your brain that it is safe. And your brain listens. It softens. It settles. It begins to repair. You think of healing, not as a destination, but as a rhythm, a slow return to balance. You begin to wonder how movement might shape memory, how breath might shape emotion, how nutrition might shape identity. And you realize the body is not separate from the mind. It is the mind in motion. You feel it now, the quiet integration, the way your thoughts become embodied, the way your body becomes thoughtful. You are not just thinking. You are sensing. You are moving. You are becoming. And as you drift, you begin to ask, if the body shapes the brain, what shapes the body? What deeper rhythms, beyond breath and motion, guide your inner world? You begin to feel how time is not a thief, but a teacher. Each moment, each memory, each shift in rhythm offers your brain a chance to adapt. Tonight, you rest not in resistance, but in renewal, as your mind stretches softly toward the unfamiliar and begins to ask, what does it mean to grow wiser, not just older? Chapter 10. The Mind That Moves with Time. The summary of this chapter: time doesn't just pass, it shapes, teaches, and transforms. You explore how learning, novelty, and change protect the aging brain. Tonight, you rest in the rhythm of growth and feel your mind stretch gently toward tomorrow. You lie still, but time continues, not rushing, not demanding, just unfolding. You feel it in your breath, in the quiet stretch of your thoughts, in the way your body remembers what it learned today. Time doesn't just pass, it teaches. It shapes your brain with every experience, every challenge, every moment of wonder. You begin to sense that aging is not decline, it is adaptation, a slow, graceful evolution of thought and self. Your brain is not fixed, it is fluid. Even now, it rewires, reshapes, responds. This ability to change with time is called neuroplasticity, and it does not fade with age. It deepens. You think of the elders who remain curious, who learn new languages, who take up painting, who ask questions as if the world is still new. Their brains reflect this. Studies show that lifelong learning protects against cognitive decline. It strengthens memory, enhances attention, and supports emotional balance. You begin to understand that novelty is nourishment. When you encounter something unfamiliar, a new idea, a new skill, a new perspective, your brain lights up. Neurons form new connections. Networks reorganize. The architecture of thought expands. You imagine your brain as a forest. Each new experience plants a seed. Each act of learning grows a tree. And over time, the forest becomes richer, more resilient. Even small acts of novelty have power. Reading a poem, listening to unfamiliar music, taking a different route home. These moments challenge your brain to adapt, to stretch, to grow. You think of adaptation not as survival, but as creativity. Your brain is designed to meet change with imagination. When routines shift, when roles evolve, when life surprises you, your brain doesn't resist. It reconfigures. This flexibility is a form of wisdom. Not just knowing, but knowing how to change. You begin to feel how time shapes identity, not by erasing who you were, but by layering who you've become. Each memory, each lesson, each transformation adds depth. You are not just aging, you are unfolding. You think of the hippocampus, the region that stores memory. It remains active throughout life, and when stimulated by learning, it grows. You imagine it like a riverbed carving new paths with each flow of experience. You think of the prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making. It benefits from challenge, from puzzles, from planning, from reflection. You begin to see that mental effort is not strain, it is exercise. And like muscles, your brain grows stronger when used with care. You think of emotion, how it colors memory, how it guides attention, how it deepens learning. Older adults often show greater emotional regulation. They focus more on meaning, less on distraction. They savor. This emotional wisdom is not accidental. It is earned through time. You begin to feel how your own emotions have shifted, how you respond with more patience, more nuance, more grace. This too is neuroplasticity. You think of purpose, how having a reason to grow fuels the brain's resilience. Purpose gives time direction. It turns aging into a journey. You reflect on your own path, the things you've learned, the ways you've changed, the questions that still guide you. And you realize you are still becoming. You think of sleep, how it supports memory, how it clears toxins, how it prepares the brain for tomorrow. Even rest is part of growth. Tonight, as you lie still, your brain continues its work. It consolidates, it repairs, it prepares. You begin to feel how time is not your enemy. It is your collaborator. It offers you new ways to think, new ways to feel, new ways to be. You think of creativity, how it flourishes with age, how older minds often produce deeper art, richer stories, more layered insight. This is not despite aging. It is because of it. You begin to trust that your brain will meet time with grace. You don't need to rush. You don't need to resist. You only need to remain curious. And tonight, you do. You wonder what you might learn tomorrow. What new idea might stretch your mind? What new rhythm might shape your thoughts? You feel your neurons lean gently forward, not with urgency, but with readiness. You are not just aging, you are evolving. And as you drift, you begin to ask, if time teaches the brain, what teaches the heart? What quiet forces shape your emotional world as you grow? You begin to feel how the mind, like a tree, must shed what no longer serves. Old thoughts fall softly, skills fade quietly, and space opens for something new. Tonight, you rest in the grace of release, not as forgetting, but as renewal. And you wonder, what might your mind become when it finally lets go? Chapter 11. The Art of Letting Go. The summary of this chapter: not every memory stays, not every skill remains. You explore the science of pruning and release, how the brain lets go to grow. Tonight, you learn that letting go is not loss, but renewal, and your mind begins to breathe. You lie still, but something inside you begins to loosen. Not in fear, not in grief, but in quiet readiness. You feel the weight of old thoughts, the echo of memories that no longer serve, and you begin to wonder what your mind chooses to keep and what it gently lets go. Letting go is not forgetting, it is refinement, a slow, cellular wisdom that clears space for what matters now. Your brain, ever adaptive, does not cling to everything. It prunes, it edits, it releases. This process is called synaptic pruning. It begins in childhood, but continues through life. Your brain trims unused connections, strengthens the ones you need, and reshapes its architecture to match your experience. You imagine it like a garden. Neural branches stretch and grow, but not all are meant to stay. Some are clipped, some fall away, making room for new growth. This pruning is not a flaw. It is a feature. It keeps your brain efficient, focused, alive. You think of skills once sharp, now softened. Languages you once spoke. Habits you once held. They fade, not as failure, but as transition. Your brain is not a museum. It is a living system. It evolves with you. You begin to feel how release is part of learning. To gain clarity, you must let go of clutter. To grow, you must shed. Even memory follows this rhythm. Not every moment is stored. Not every detail remains. The hippocampus, your brain's memory keeper, filters experience. It decides what to encode, what to discard, what to reshape. You think of a childhood room. You remember the light, but not the wallpaper. You remember the feeling, but not the floor. Emotion guides memory. What moves you stays. What fades, frees. You begin to trust that forgetting is not failure. It is focus. Your brain cannot hold everything. It must choose. And in that choosing, it becomes more itself. You think of emotional release. How feelings too must be let go. Anger held too long becomes tension. Sadness unspoken becomes weight. But when you allow emotion to move, to rise, to breathe, to pass, your brain responds. The limbic system, your emotional core, calms. The prefrontal cortex regains clarity. The body softens. You begin to feel how letting go is a form of healing. You think of grief, not as a wound, but as a wave. It comes, it stays, it leaves, and each time, your brain learns how to hold less tightly. You think of forgiveness, not as forgetting, but as release. The act of letting go of the need to control, to fix, to rewrite. Forgiveness changes the brain. It reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and restores emotional balance. You begin to feel how release is not weakness, it is strength. You think of meditation, how it teaches the mind to observe, to accept, to let go. Thoughts arise, you notice them, you breathe, you return. This practice reshapes the brain. It strengthens attention, reduces reactivity, and supports emotional regulation. You begin to see how letting go is not passive, it is active, it is intentional. You think of creativity, how artists revise, how writers delete, how musicians pause. Letting go is part of the process. To create, you must clear space. Your brain, in its quiet wisdom, knows this. You begin to feel how clarity comes not from adding, but from subtracting. You think of aging, how the brain sheds what it no longer needs. Skills fade, names slip, but wisdom deepens. Older brains often show greater emotional insight, greater focus on meaning, greater ability to let go. This is not decline, it is refinement. You begin to trust that your brain is not losing itself, it is becoming itself. You think of identity, how it shifts, how it sheds. You are not who you were, and that is not a loss, it is a becoming. You begin to feel how letting go is part of knowing who you are. Not every path is yours. Not every story belongs. Not every thought must stay. You breathe. You soften. You release. And your brain responds. It clears. It settles. It begins again. You think of nature, how trees drop leaves, how rivers change course, how seasons turn. Your brain follows this rhythm. It lets go to make room for what's next. You begin to wonder what you're ready to release. A thought, a fear, a version of yourself. And you realize you don't need to force it. You only need to allow it. Letting go is not forgetting. It is remembering what matters most. And tonight, you begin to breathe with that truth. You feel your mind open, not wide, but gently. You feel space return, not empty, but ready. And as you drift, you begin to ask, if letting go clears the mind, what fills it next? What quiet force guides your attention toward what matters? Perhaps it's not just release, but focus. Not just pruning, but presence. And as your mind begins to breathe, you sense something still unfolding. A quiet bloom that never ends. In next, you'll drift into the final chapter, where aging is not an ending, but a new kind of beginning. And your brain, still blooming, rests in the glow of possibility. Chapter 12. The Bloom That Never Ends. The summary of this chapter. You've wandered through science, memory, and emotion. Now, you rest in the truth. Your brain is still blooming. Aging is not an ending. It is a new kind of beginning. Tonight, you sleep in the glow of possibility. And tomorrow, you wake to a garden still growing. You lie still, wrapped in quiet. The air around you is soft, like silk drawn across skin. Your breath slows, your thoughts loosen. And somewhere beneath the hush, a question blooms. What if this moment, this age, this body, is not a fading, but a flowering? You've journeyed far, through the forests of memory, the rivers of emotion, the shifting sands of identity. And now, you arrive at the edge of something new. Not youth, not decline, but a kind of becoming. Science once told a simpler story, that the brain, like a candle, burns down with time, that neurons die, and with them, the self. But that story was incomplete. Now, we know better. Now, we know you bloom. Neuroplasticity, the brain's quiet miracle. It does not end with childhood. It does not vanish with age. It hums beneath your skin, a garden of possibility, waiting for light. Each thought you think, each memory you revisit, each emotion you feel, they shape the soil. They guide the roots. They whisper to the seeds. You are not fixed. You are not fading. You are growing. Imagine your brain as a forest at dusk. The trees are old, yes, but their roots are deep, and their branches still reach. New shoots rise from the undergrowth. Moss glows in the twilight. And somewhere, a flower opens. This is the truth of aging. Not decay, but transformation. Not silence, but symphony. You've seen it in others. The elder who learns to paint, the grandmother who writes poetry, the man who finds peace after years of unrest. Their brains blooming, their minds alive. And now you feel it in yourself. Not as a rush, but as a gentle unfolding, a petal at a time. You remember something you once believed, that wisdom came from knowing. But now, you sense it comes from growing, from staying open, from letting go. Your brain is not a machine. It is not a library. It is a garden. And gardens do not retire. They rest, they renew, they surprise. Tonight, you rest in that truth. You are not done. You are not finished. You are blooming. And the science agrees. Studies show that older brains can rewire, that new neurons can form, that emotional depth can deepen, that creativity can flourish. It's not just possible. It's natural. You think of the hippocampus, the part of your brain that holds memory. It can grow, even now, even here. You think of the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reflection, of empathy, of choice. It can strengthen, even now, even here. You think of your own life, the moments that shaped you, the people who held you, the dreams that still whisper, and you realize you are not a story ending. You are a story evolving. The bloom is not loud. It does not shout. It does not demand. It waits. It listens. It opens. You feel it in your breath, in the way your chest rises, not with urgency, but with grace. You feel it in your thoughts, in the way they drift, not to problems, but to possibilities. You feel it in your heart, in the way it softens, not from weakness, but from wisdom. This is the bloom. This is the never-ending. You think of the garden again, of the soil, rich with experience, of the roots, tangled with memory, of the flowers, each one a moment, a lesson, a love. And you wonder, what will bloom next? You do not need to know. You only need to rest, to trust the soil, to feel the light. Because even in sleep, your brain listens. Even in stillness, it grows. You are not alone in this. Across the world, others lie in quiet, feeling the same bloom. Aging is not a solitary path. It is a shared garden. And each mind, each heart, adds color. You think of the future, not as a place, but as a rhythm, a slow unfolding, a gentle bloom, and you smile. Not because you know what's coming, but because you know you're ready. You are blooming, still, always. And tomorrow, you will wake to new light, to new thoughts, to new growth. But for now, you rest. You rest in the glow of possibility, in the warmth of renewal, in the truth of neuroplasticity, not as a theory, but as a feeling. You are not a candle burning down. You are a garden waking up, and somewhere in the quiet, a new petal opens, and as the breath deepens, you begin to rest, not as someone fading, but as someone flowering in twilight. Your brain, though older, still listens, still learns, still reshapes itself in the quiet. You are not a closing chapter. You are a slow bloom in dusk light. Let this final breath carry your story into sleep. Let the soft rhythm of renewal cradle your thoughts. You are not declining. You are adapting. You are becoming. Good night, gentle mind. Good night, resilient bloom. Good night, quiet architect of change. Next time, we'll meet again with a new neuroplasticity episode shared softly in the comments below. The journey continues, tenderly, truthfully, together.